Have you ever been in a conversation and suddenly felt as if your mind had disappeared? A total blank, as if all the words had evaporated. It's a paralyzing feeling, often mistaken for shyness, insecurity, or even disinterest. But the truth is that we are not empty inside. We are overwhelmed. We think too much, analyze too much, demand too much of ourselves. And in the midst of this mental confusion, we forget that conversation is, first and foremost, a human experience, not a performance. The paradox is cruel. The more we try to say the right thing, the more we block the thousands of ideas we could express. We create such a demanding internal filter that our words die before they are born. This filter, often cultivated throughout our lives out of fear of judgment or rejection, does not protect us. It silences us. And that is why, when faced with common social interactions, such as a date or an interview, we freeze up. Not because of a lack of content, but because of excessive censorship. The root of this difficulty lies less in the absence of topics and more in the way we approach conversation. We were taught to speak carefully, but not to communicate truthfully. We were encouraged to be interesting, but not taught to be curious. Instead of simply asking a question or sharing something sincere, we try to calculate the impact of each word, as if we were being evaluated with every sentence. And so we distance ourselves from the spontaneity that makes any conversation truly alive. But there is a way back. It is possible to relearn how to talk like we breathe, with ease, naturalness, and presence. There is a way to rediscover the pleasure of listening, of asking questions with genuine interest, of building bridges where we once saw only walls. In this process, curiosity reveals itself as our greatest asset. The right questions, spontaneous connections, the alternation between depth and lightness, all of this leads us back to the place where conversation ceases to be a burden and becomes a space for encounter once again. Understanding that your mind is not empty, but blocked by old patterns is the first step to unlocking not only words, but also connections. And perhaps the most important thing is not just learning to talk, but relearning how to be present, because that's where conversations come to life. We are not just losing the ability to communicate, we are distancing ourselves from one another. And rescuing this art in times of haste and distraction is an act of resistance and humanity. The key to keeping a conversation alive and engaging is not your intelligence, but your curiosity. It is curiosity that transforms superficial interactions into meaningful exchanges. When we approach someone with genuine interest, something changes profoundly. Anxiety diminishes, our focus shifts from ourselves to the other person, and words flow much more naturally. Curious people don't worry about appearing interesting, because they are already interesting simply by wanting to understand the world of others. And in the process, they create a space where the other person feels seen and valued. This cannot be forced. The human brain easily recognizes when interest is genuine or when we are just applying social techniques. Authentic curiosity is like a lens that magnifies the presence of others before us. Asking questions is not just a way to keep the conversation going. It is a gesture of connection. The difference between asking, "What do you do?" and "What is the most challenging part of your job?" may seem subtle, but it is enormous in its effects. The first question is common and tends to generate automatic responses. The second invites reflection and shows that we are willing to go beyond the surface. When we listen carefully, small details become gateways to depth. People in general are hungry to be truly heard. We are so accustomed to conversations where everyone just waits for their turn to speak that being listened to with genuine curiosity becomes a rare and powerful gift. Just remember how we feel When someone is genuinely interested in our stories, in the subtext of what we say, in the emotions we reveal without realizing it. This kind of listening leaves lasting impressions because it is not just an exchange of information, but an exchange of humanity. Curiosity, then, is not just any social skill. It is an emotional superpower that, when cultivated, transforms our relationships. The true art of conversation begins when we stop trying to prove something and start to actually discover who is in front of us. Conversing well is not about mastering an endless repertoire of brilliant stories, but knowing how to stay in the other person's territory for longer. This is where the silent but powerful art of follow-up questions comes in. This skill transforms a mundane conversation into a rich and engaging experience. It requires attentive listening, patience, and a sincere desire to explore the other person's world without rushing. Most social interactions founder on the anxiety of appearing interesting. As soon as the other person finishes a sentence, we jump to our own experience, missing the chance to dig deeper. A good conversationalist doesn't rush. They realize that every sentence spoken carries seeds of stories, emotions, and experiences that have not yet been revealed. And with simple, focused questions, they nurture those seeds until they blossom into something memorable. If someone mentions that they have recently been to Italy, the usual question would be, "Did you like it?" But those who have mastered this art want to know which city was their favorite. What made that place stand out? Whether it was the food, the people, or a specific moment. Each new question is a ladder that descends deeper into the other person's universe, revealing dimensions that would go unnoticed in a superficial dialogue. It's not about controlling the conversation, but about freeing it, creating space for the other person to expand, reveal themselves, feel understood. And the effect of this is immediate. We've all felt that discomfort when someone asks us something about our life, only to then talk about themselves for 20 minutes. It's as if our answer is just a trigger for the other person's monologue. That's not dialogue. It's a battle for attention. Follow-up questions break this cycle. They say, without words, "I'm here. I care about what you have to say. I want to understand more." Over time, this practice becomes natural, and when used well, it reduces the pressure to always have something brilliant to say, because the weight of the conversation is no longer on our shoulders. We begin to rely on what the other person offers us, and the conversation ceases to be an exercise in performance and becomes a moment of real presence. Conversations are like rivers. They flow, divert, deepen, or dry up. The secret lies in learning to read their paths and realizing that even when one course seems to end, there's always another one to follow. This is what makes the chain of ideas such a powerful tool. Often, a simple sentence contains within it 5, 6, or even more conversation paths. And what differentiates a dialogue that dies in the first silence from one that lasts for hours is our ability to see these paths and decide which one to follow. When someone comments that they have returned from a hike in Colorado with their brother, even if they say the weather was bad, we have before us not just a piece of information, but a map. We can talk about Colorado, about travel, about trails, about brothers, about the weather, or even about how bad weather changes the experience of an adventure. Every detail is a door ajar. The most common mistake is to ignore these possibilities and try to force a new topic from scratch, creating artificial discomfort. Learning to make natural transitions, to recognize the topics implicit in each statement, is like having an internal GPS to navigate any social interaction. And this is not a cold technique. It is, in fact, a form of mindfulness. It requires us to really listen, not just wait for our turn to respond. It is this state of presence that allows us to pick up on nuances, hidden emotions, and unspoken intentions. In a real conversation, the other person is always offering us more than their words reveal. The problem is that we are so distracted trying to seem interesting that we miss the clues that would continue the connection. Perhaps the most beautiful thing about chaining is realizing that it brings back the lightheartedness of a game to the conversation, where there is no pressure to be brilliant, just curiosity to see where the next move will take us. With practice, this becomes natural. We begin to see possibilities where we once saw obstacles, and those uncomfortable pauses which once caused anxiety are now seen as breathing space, invitations to a new path, a new discovery. Conversation is a delicate art, like a dance where the rhythm is dictated by the exchange between depth and lightness. There's only real connection when we allow ourselves to touch the other emotionally, but also know when to make room for laughter, lightness, and pause. The balance between these two extremes is what transforms an ordinary conversation into a memorable experience. When everything is too deep, the interaction becomes dense, heavy, even exhausting. But if everything remains on the surface, it slips through your fingers, leaving no trace. The real mastery lies in knowing when to dive in and when to come back up. This rhythm is not rigid. It depends on the context, the moment, the connection established. After an intense conversation about professional challenges, for example, it can be invigorating to comment on a funny video or something curious that lightens the mood. Similarly, when talking about Netflix series, we can subtly deepen the discussion by asking whether the stories we consume influence the way we see the world. This natural movement between light and heavy, between laughter and reflection, keeps the conversation alive and adaptable, like a breathing organism. We live in a time where this balance has been lost. Social media has pushed us to extremes. We are either involved in toxic debates or laughing at empty content. The art of conversation, with its ability to shift layers and create meaning, has been neglected. However, it is precisely this alternation that humanizes dialogue. The most captivating people we talk to are those who know how to move between serious and relaxed with ease. Not because they rehearse what they say, but because they are present, adjusting their tone according to how they feel the other person is feeling. Regaining this skill is also a way of rescuing our sensitivity. It is realizing that sometimes a joke at the right moment is worth as much as a confession, and that, at other times, a sincere question can open the heart more than hours of trivial conversation. When we understand this, we begin to value the nuances, the silences, the spontaneous smiles. Talking well, at its core, is knowing how to read the moment and offering the other person what they need to stay there with us a little longer. Even with all the techniques in the world, there will be times when your mind simply freezes. It's inevitable. Silence sets in, discomfort grows, and a feeling of failure overwhelms us. But it's not the end. It's just a bump in the road. What separates someone who is confident from someone who is anxious is not the absence of these lapses, but the existence of strategies to overcome them. Having a plan when your mind goes blank is like carrying a parachute when you jump. You may not always use it, but knowing it's there completely changes your confidence. One of the simplest ways to pick up the thread of a conversation is to look around. The environment, always available, offers natural hooks. A comment on the music playing in the cafe, the decor, or even the smell of the place can open new windows. Another surefire strategy is to revisit something that has already been mentioned. This not only shows that you were listening, but also gives the conversation an organic continuity. You said you grew up in Seattle. What was that like for you? Questions like this resume the connection in a smooth and natural way. Even experienced communicators, speakers, presenters, and therapists experience these moments of mental block. The difference is that they don't panic because they know they have resources at their disposal. These tools act as safety nets, allowing the conversation to continue even when creativity fails. They free us from the fear of making mistakes and give us the courage to take more risks in our interactions. And since we're talking about courage and real connections, I want to ask you something important. If this content helped you in any way, if you felt that it brought you relief, clarity, or simply made you feel less alone, like the video, and leave the word connection in the comments as a sign of commitment. YouTube's algorithm has changed, and today, every like, every comment, every interaction helps this message reach more people who, like you, are looking for ways to express themselves better, to create more human connections in an increasingly disconnected world. And if you can, consider supporting the channel. Any amount makes a difference. Just like in a conversation where a small gesture can change everything, your contribution helps keep this space alive so that more people can find this type of content when they need it most. For some, this is more than information. It's companionship, it's care, it's listening.